Hello everybody, welcome to my audio tutorial for OBS. I'm Barkeep, and we're quickly going to go through how to set up your audio for the first time, some do's and don'ts, what the filters do, and along with how to set up some of your VST Reaper filters for OBS streaming. Firstly, let's take a look at your audio sources. Most often you'll have the same sources as I do. Desktop audio and microphone/auxiliary. Desktop audio is everything that comes through your computer, things like your video games, stuff from YouTube. Microphone/auxiliary is also self-explanatory, as that's your microphone there. Make sure that this is properly set to the microphone that you're going to use by right-clicking on microphone/auxiliary, going to Properties, and then in the device box here, setting the microphone to the one that you use. In my case, it's a Snowball. This is important if you have more than one microphone like me. For example, you might have one on your headset like I do, and then you have one that's dedicated for streaming. So make sure to select the right one here. There you go. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start off with desktop audio down here. Good rule of thumb for any of your audio sources is that they should just slightly breach into the yellow area. You can see down here as I'm talking, my input for the microphone goes into the green and just past the yellow. This is a good measure for how things should be when you're first starting out there. If it gets into the red, you're being too loud. If it's staying back here in the green, you're being too quiet. So always remember that a new video game or a new situation might require a little bit of attunement on this. So if you have to, use these sliders down here to increase the gain or decrease the gain on either. Also, always remember that for any best audio in any situation, the less filters you have on any of these, the better. First one that we're going to start up here is for desktop audio. You'll right-click on that, and you'll go into Filters. This just gives you a general overview of what the filters page kind of looks like here. It's pretty simple. You click the plus button to add filters in, trash can to remove a filter that you currently have selected, and the up and down buttons to move the filters in the current chain filters that you have going on here. This can be useful because the order of your audio filters matters. Sometimes you'll have a compressor on top of a gain and it doesn't sound so good, but then maybe put a gain on top of a compressor and it sounds better. Always make sure to play around with that. Some of these settings can sound better in a particular manner of order. So, for desktop audio, as you can see here, I'll show you how to use compressor, and a popular method of reducing volume while you're speaking so that you come across with more clarity called side ducking or side chain ducking. So, first of all, let's go over what the compressor here does. This can be added to your microphone as well without the side chain/ducking source, in order to have a filter that prevents you from going over a certain limit of noise, so that you aren't clipping and, making a whole bunch of noise that turns into distortion when it gets into the red area down here. So a compressor automatically lowers the source's volume, reduces the chance of peaking, like I just said, above 0 decibels. That's then it turns it back up once your volume resumes being normal. So, as you can see here, we've got the ratio value here. That's the amount of compression or gain reduction to apply to what's being put through the source. For example, 2:1 is a very weak amount of compression, while 6:1 would be a very strong amount of compression. I use 1.5 here to 1 because your audio doesn't require that much of a strong compression if it's desktop audio that's being filtered. You might consider something stronger if you're using this on your microphone. Next up is your threshold here. Once the volume of your source reaches that level, that being down here in the audio mixer, if I start talking and this reaches perhaps 15 or 10, if I had this on a regular microphone, it would start putting in that compression to make sure that I don't go into 5 or 0. But for this, because we're doing side ducking, I have this set to 53.20. which means that this side ducking comes in at a very early level here, meaning that unless there's almost no desktop audio, it's going to be side ducked whenever I start speaking. So that's why I've got that threshold there. The attack value here is how quickly in milliseconds you want your compressor to reach full sound reduction when the compression activates. In this case, it's how fast your side ducking enables itself. I have this on 2 milliseconds because I like it fast, but if you want that to be just a little bit less, then feel free to do it that way. Then, the release on the other hand is how quickly in milliseconds you want compression to stop. It's 420 because I like a long turn to the audio being at full normal volume without it being side ducked. But if you want that to be a little bit quicker, then a lower value might suit your needs. Or if you're using this on a microphone, then a lower value would be perfect, because you don't want it to take a long time for the compression to come back to normal. It's not really wonky. Finally, your output gain at the bottom here is how much your gain might likely be put into the source, as compression typically makes your output a little bit quieter. So if you're using this on a microphone, increasing this or decreasing this can help adjust your volume to where it needs to be. But because we're using this for side ducking, we don't have to make an adjustment on this whatsoever. So with that explained, sidechain compression or side ducking is easily achieved by selecting your microphone source options box here. As you can see, I've got microphone/auxiliary selected. So that means whenever my desktop audio is playing and I want to speak and have that kind of cut into and sit on top of my desktop audio, I have my microphone side duck into the desktop audio now. Now, this is a really great method for having your clarity come through a lot better when it comes to having a lot that's going on that's very complex desktop audio, like a very loud video game or something that's got a lot of music to it, or a lot of people talking in your video game and whatnot. I find this to be a really good method. Anyways, moving onwards, I'm going to show you a nice little method for testing out your microphone/auxiliary for when you're working with filters, when you want to try and understand what you sound like. So, we'll right-click on Microphone Auxiliary, and we'll select Advanced Audio Properties. As you can see here, it comes up with our sources, our desktop audio, microphone/auxiliary. We'll come up with anything else if there are any audio sources in here, but these are the only ones we have. What we're going to focus on here is the audio monitoring area. If you go over to Monitor Off on Microphone Auxiliary, you'll see that you can click this, and you can also change it to Monitor and Output. Now, I'm not going to do this because it's going to double up on what you'll be hearing. You'll hear twice of me, but what I'll hear is myself talking into the computer. Now, selecting that is a really good way to kind of figure out what you're going to sound like to your audience. So, once you have that selected, you can kind of figure out what you need to do to improve or, change your filters and whatnot. And then when you're done, you can go back in the same way and choose Monitor Off to set it back so you don't have that double up and people start wondering why there's two. Alright, so now that we've gotten through that, we're going to take a look at the filters that are included with OBS. For the sake of my microphone, I'm going to do this on desktop audio, but pretend that I've right-clicked on the Microphone Auxiliary and selected filters from there. Just ignore these two at the top over here. We'll go through the list. Tell you all about how it all works. So, first of all, we've got the 3-band equalizer. You can add that in by saying OK. The 3-band equalizer represents 3 divisions of frequency for treble, just high, mid, and bass tones, aka your high, mid, and low. So depending on your voice, you can either raise or lower the highs, middles, and lows to suit the way that you speak. For example, somebody with a baritone voice might get a kick out of having a higher low increment and a lower high increment. That means that your lower parts of how you speak, lower noises, will be exemplified with a higher gain. While something that's like, glass smashing or higher pitched things won't come through as loud. So this is good for emphasis on different kinds of voices, and I recommend playing around with this one to see what works for you. Next on what we've got on here, because we've already gone through the compressor, which is very similar to what we just saw, except we're not using the side tucking chain source here, we will move on to showing off the expander. So, the expander is very similar to a compressor. The expander can be used to reduce background noise, such as computer fans, mouse clicking, keyboard clicking, breathing, just generally all those unwanted mouth noises. You've got two presets up here. You have expander, gate. Expander is better for light noise reduction, while gate one is more similar to your regular type of noise gate, just getting rid of anything that might be in the background. So, much like the compressor, the settings here are very much the same. You have your ratio, your threshold, your attack, release, and the output gain. If you've gone through the part of the video that talks about the compressor, then you know what these mean, and you can experiment with these to your liking so that you have the right amounts of ratio and threshold, attack, release, and output gain. The only difference here is the detection method. That changes how your input level is measured, affecting the sensitivity of noise detection. I recommend you leave this as RMS. Even though you can change that to peak, RMS is probably the best setting for a streaming type scenario. Alright, so next on the list is a simple gain filter here. Gain is very simple. It can be helpful for very quiet audio sources, such as soft voices, if you need to increase or decrease your volume, as you can see here. So, if you need to increase that volume, move it up, you can move it down, but personally, I would recommend you go into your desktop audio slider first, or your mic/auxiliary slider here first, and try to increase or decrease the gain there before you start working with the filter here. We're going to skip invert polarity, because this doesn't really have anything to do with streaming all that much. It doesn't have all that much use, and I don't think there will be anything for it in the future that will justify needing it all that badly. So we will move on to limit. Add that on in. So, much like a compressor again, the filter that we have here allows you to prevent audio sources from peaking, causing distortions and clipping. This is good for loud voices and audio sources. Threshold here is where your microphone can hit, allowing no sound past that point. Again, this relates to the position of the bars on your audio mixer down here, so at -6, it's just a little bit beneath the maximum right there, ensuring that you don't go up to 0. And the release, of course, as usual, is how fast the filter comes back from reducing gain on your mic after it exceeds the threshold. So you want this to be reasonably quick, for the most part. Next up here is the noise gate. This can be used to cut off background noise while you're not talking. This helps if you have fans or things running in the background that you don't want your audience to hear. Good rule of thumb here is to select a closed threshold above what's making the background noise, and then an open threshold slightly below your voice input to get your best results. Remember, these dB values are relative to your position on your audio mixer here. So, as you can see me speaking here, I would want an open threshold that's just below where I've got it. And then, if I were to stay quiet, I would probably see my fan or something running in the background and whatnot. And so I would have my close threshold above what's making that background noise. Finally, you've got your attack time here. That's how fast in milliseconds the noise gate activates. Hold value is the time for how long that noise gate does its job for, and release time is how fast it goes back to normal. Make sure to play around with these, figure out what works best with you, and then you'll have yourself a pretty good noise gate for preventing noises and such in the background. So the noise gate is a good selection for getting rid of noise and stuff in the background, but we'll be talking about a better option for noise gating just in a minute. And speaking of reduction of noise, we also have the built-in noise suppression that attempts to reduce background noise, such as, clicking, flicking, all those sorts of little things in the background. I like this one a lot. It's very simple. RNN noise is good quality. It says more CPU usage, but it takes up very little CPU usage as it automatically attempts to get rid of all the background noises and stuff going on. Speaks can be used, but again, I recommend using RNN noise. This is a good one to use. Finally, the upward compressor we have here is the same as a compressor, but it's the opposite of a regular compressor, which focuses on amplifying quieter sounds that fall beneath a certain threshold. So while the compressor tries to quiet things down on certain things that reach a threshold, the upward compressor says, hey, here's something that's too quiet. Let's try to get some more gain on that. Amplify it. So once again, same kind of compression settings here, except for the knee width. A higher knee value applies compression only when the value's been reached, and a lower knee value applies gradual compression at a much slower rate. So that's all the filters that OBS has, but there's one more thing we need to examine before we're completely done. And that's Reaper plugins. Now, you want to head over to reaper.fm/download.php, and feel free to download whichever set of plugins works for your computer. The installer will guide you through everything you need to do, and once you're done, you can close and reopen OBS. This time around, you'll have access to VST Reaper plugins, and in this tutorial, I'll be explaining two of the really good ones for streaming. That's going to be Recomp and Reaffirm. So, navigate back to this page by right-clicking on Microphone/Auxiliary and selecting Filters. You'll now find that when you try to add in some new filters, you'll have the VST2X plugin option. I'm going to add two of these. There we go. And now you can see that there's multiple options from the plugin area up here that you can select from. For this tutorial, we're going to be choosing Recomp Standalone. We'll also choose Reaffirm Standalone. There we go. We now have Recomp and Reaffirm as the plugins put in. So now that we've chosen our plugins here, we can use Open Plugin Interface to look at all the insides of the plugin we've just put into our system. This might look complicated, but if you've gotten this far in the video, the settings will look very, very similar to the compressor that we've already worked with. The best settings that I found in Recomp is to move the threshold bar just beneath where your normal talking voice is. This will ensure anything that above it is compressed. So when you're talking and you have this set up on your microphone/auxiliary input, there'll be a green bar going up and down, up and down, up and down. If you put that just below where your regular talking is, they'll make sure that anything that goes above that gets compression. And so that's really good because this one's a little bit more dynamic than your regular compressor that you'll get from a regular OBS compression filter setup. That being that you'll have something that's a little bit more on top of the ball, constantly running and constantly compressing what you have going on. instead of something that looks at a decibel value. The best settings that I found for recomp here for the rest here is to leave the pre-comp alone, to adjust the attack to an attack of 1. Just want that to be pretty quick. You can adjust this if you want it slower with larger value. I also took off classic attack and auto release here as well, to help with generally the entirety of the way Recomp activates itself and then deactivates itself. From what I've found, these are two better selections for having this work. Then on top of that, I've found that usually using a ratio of 4 to 1 and then a knee size of 3 decibels works for me. If you're curious, the red meter on the side here shows how much of the volume is, being cut out, being reduced. So when you start to play around with all these settings and, figure out what all this means, you can use this bar on this side here to determine what all is being compressed, and that'll give you a good guide into figuring out what exactly needs to be changed, what exactly, needs to be done to ensure that you get the best compression. So, that done, we'll close on out. Close plugin interface to make sure that that's all saved up and ready to go. We'll move to Reefer. Take a look at it. Now, Reefer is great for background stuff like fans, vacuums, anything that's just a constant drone in the background. It's a really good noise canceller. We'll open it on up here. As you can see, there's a couple of settings that we can work with here. What we'll want to do is we'll want to set edit mode to precise, because we want this to be very precise on what comes in, what goes out. And we will change this mode from EQ to subtract. Normally, if I had this on microphone/auxiliary, you would see a yellow line going across the bottom there, and that would be the volume input. That would be in the background there. If I had a fan on, if I had something that was constantly going on in there, it would be showing up in there. So, to cancel that noise out, what I would do is I would select automatically build noise profile. I would stay very silent for the duration of how long it takes to capture that background noise, and then I would unselect it. Now what this would do is it would capture the background noise being like a vacuum or a fan going off or construction work in the background, any kind of noisy environment for your recording. And it'll ensure that anything beneath that red line is completely cut out of your audio. So fans, clicking, stuff like that will come through. But anything above that red line will come through in the audio. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this will come through a little bit quieter because it is kind of a mode of compression. So adjusting the output gain on the side over here can be beneficial if it comes through sounding too quiet. But once you're done here, go ahead and exit out of there and close your plugin interface and close your filters. And there you go. Remember, play around with your filters. Try to have as little as possible on your microphone/auxiliary to create a genuine audio environment. And overall, just experiment. Find out what works best for you. Thank you for watching. I hope this tutorial helps you out. If you have anything you'd like to say, leave it in the comments section below. Make sure to subscribe, slap that like button. I'd appreciate it. And I hope you have a good day.